is that when I'm at work during the week, I'm always eager to get home to just go be in silence. It's like something in my whole being is just thirsting for silence, craving silence. I'll be like counting down how long I have to get home so I can be in silence. Then I get home and I do everything in my power to avoid silence. And it's just like craziness. And I don't really understand it, and it's such a strange internal paradox. And so if you could give me some pointers for that, it would be greatly appreciated.
Both your desire to get home quickly from work, to get back to the silence, and the exposure of this resistance to silence are expressions of your love of truth. They appear to be contradictory, but in fact they're not. And the reason is this. Your deep motive is this love of truth, which expresses itself in you as this love of silence, which during your day, when you're active at work, you long for the silence, and you're not in touch with your resistance to it, because your mind is engaged on what you're required to do at work. So all you feel is this longing for silence. Now, when you come home, your mind is no longer required to attend to your work. In other words, your mind is free. Circumstances are no longer distracting you from silence. So what happens then is that the underlying resistance or avoidance of the silence bubbles up and you become aware of it. During the day, you don't feel it because your attention is required by your job. As soon as your attention is no longer required to be focused on anything, in other words, when you get home, there's nothing for your attention to do. You feel this underlying resistance come up. That's a very good thing. That underlying resistance, which is the avoidance of the now, it's so uncomfortable that most people don't even ever allow themselves to feel it. The first rising up of this avoidance of the now, we go straight for the fridge, the YouTube clip, the bottle, the cigarettes, the TV program, anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's always towards an object, a substance, an activity, a state of mind, or a relationship. And in this way, either at work or when we're at home, we successfully avoid the discomfort of this avoidance of the now. So it's very good that you feel it. It's not in opposition to your love of the truth. It's precisely an expression of your love of truth, that you are able to feel this fully without distracting yourself from it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, when you feel this avoidance, when you get home, you have the opportunity to be silent that you've longed for all day, and when the opportunity presents itself, you find yourself avoiding it. Become really interested in that avoidance. Instead of thinking it as something that is wrong or bad or thwarting your desire for silence, do the opposite. Become fascinated by it. Be interested in it. So just sit down and watch this play of thoughts and feelings in you. Become really interested in them. trace them backwards. In other words, don't do what they're telling you to do. What your thoughts are telling you to do is avoid this silence by the acquisition of an object, or go the other way. Sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make your acquaintance now. I'm going to find out what you're made of. I'm going to find out on whose behalf you are arising. And in order to find out on whose behalf they are arising, you have to trace them backwards to the place in yourself from which they arise. And the beauty is that if you trace them backwards, looking for the place from which they arise, you'll never find it. Because they're arising on behalf of a self that is not there. The reason why we don't notice that most of the time is because we never take the time to look for the place from which they are arising. We're too busy doing what the thoughts and feelings are telling us to do, which is to get busy with an object in one way or another. So because our attention always follows the thought outwards in the direction of objects, the non-existence of the separate self on whose behalf these feelings are arising is never discovered. So the separate self lives at the heart of the system. In fact, it's not really there. But because we never take the time to look, we lead our lives based on the presumption, and more importantly, the feeling that there is this separate self inside, and it is on behalf of this separate self that all these feelings are arising. So trace this resistance in you back, and where you thought you would find a separate self, you'll find yourself. It's not a blank emptiness that you'll find yourself, but you'll find no temporary limited self there.